from space. This is John B. Wells on the bridge of Arc Midnight, the ultimate mothership, built for comfort and speed. Good to be with you on Saturday night. We're going to speak with a man named Mark Sutherland. He makes films, and his latest project is Between Lambs and Lions. It's a dystopian future thing, one that is quite relevant in our day. You know, it's going to be the usual drill tonight. It's going to be some good talk, a few good tunes, and a good time. And speaking of music, it took a doctor to figure this out. It really did. Yes, people who have movement problems, well, music can help them with that. You're going, what? Well, I knew that. No, but it's really true. There's been a study done indicating that people with even the ability to play a little rudimentary riff on guitar or piano, it can actually help them overcome some things that otherwise they would not. And so we're going to have some monstrous music tonight. Some of the old, some of the new, and a special tribute to President Trump. Coming up just after, well, the 30-minute mark. After we take our break, we had a fantastic week on Caravan to Midnight. You know, Tuesday through Friday, I am privileged to host Caravan to Midnight, which can be found at caravantomidnight.com. And we spoke with, on Friday, episode 771, Mr. Chris Gobbets. We wanted to speak with him about the threat of certain jihadi organizations in the U.S. Well, he got into it some years ago, posing as a Muslim convert and attending, wait for it, Muslim Brotherhood Hamas conferences, gaining access as an intern within the Hamas organization, the Council on American Islamic Relations in Virginia. And what an eye-opener it was. 771 programs in archive waiting for you right now. Long, long conversations and tasteful musical interludes so you can get up and get a drink of water or something. And then we get back into it. And sometimes they go quite long, and sometimes not so long, usually around 3 hours. But we have sat there for as long as 7.5 hours and had to make a two-parter out of it. I like to bring this up a lot because it was an amazing expose put on by one Hugo Fugan. He is the man who wrote the programs for the software that would later become Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is used by civilian and military alike. And he completely deconstructed the Loretta Fuddy, let's put quote marks around the word fatality, in the crash, or rather hard landing, or maybe even just hardish water landing of a Cessna Caravan. Catastrophic engine failure, you know. No. Pratt & Whitney turboprop engine, jet engine, Pratt & Whitney, no. No, and when you see his expose, he has a book out now as well. You see look, here's a photograph of the engine. Oh, the propeller blades are bent that way. Oh, look, here's another picture of the engine. Wow, they're not bent in the same direction. They're bent another way. So ridiculous. I repeat, in case you've heard this before. Sorry about that, but I got to say it again. Swimmer delivery vehicles all over the place. Flight restrictions from flight level 24 through 27. That's 24,000 to 27,000 feet above the crash scene. You know, mobile phone footage from inside the cabin. Nobody's flipping out. Nobody's panicked. Nobody's worried about crashing. They're just sitting there. It was really quite an amazing expose. Ran into him in Bozeman, Montana, of all places, at the Red Pill Expo. And quite a guy. So anyway, that just goes to the point that we will sit in the studio and we will talk with our guests for as long as it takes to get the story. Even came up with a pretty good interview with George Webb. I just asked him some questions and he answered them, and that's going to have to do. I mean, I didn't waterboard him. I wasn't even tempted because the guy's about a foot taller than I am, and I'm 6 feet 2 inches, and I think he outweighs me by 150 pounds and still somehow looks slim. So no waterboarding for George. Uh, I don't think we're going to do that. I say, don't you think it's amazing what Mr. Trump accomplished overseas? Oh, and the left is just, they're lining up at the Hollywood sign, ready to fling themselves off into the really kind of dangerous thickets there below the Griffith Observatory, if you've been out that way. That's a rough landing. The sharpest place to land is on, well, that sticky thicket over there. In the meantime, the Pope Frankie, is warning of dangerous alliances. He says America has a distorted vision of the world. Now, let me tell you something, pal. You're the one with the distorted vision of the world. Sorry. Any Catholics in the audience, you're excused. I'm pretty sure you don't sign on to everything that Pope Francis has to say. You know, the former bouncer from Argentina. But, you know, it's not Christian. It is not Christian to oppose mass immigration. And speaking of countries having been subjected to mass immigration, let's talk about Germany for just a second. How about that G20 party? How about that party in Hamburg? Party City, Hamburg. Yeah, baby. And the party favors came in the form of a Molotov cocktails. I was asked recently, what is a Molotov cocktail? Oh, it's just a glass bottle, a beer bottle, anything, full of gasoline with a rag stuck in the top. And then you set fire to it and throw it and, you know, boom, boom, out go the lights sometimes. Otherwise, it's just a little messy fire. But all these anarchists, they don't like it. They don't like capitalism. They're not going to do what people at the top say they should do. No, they're going to destroy property and injure people and just generally raise HELL. And they did. So that's progressive Germany. Now, look at backward Poland, right? There's a wonderful meme on our Facebook page. Backward Poland versus progressive Germany. And the people in Poland, they're all just decent-looking, clean-cut people, a huge crowd of them there to welcome President Trump, and they did. And the picture below is, you know, chaos and stuff on fire in Hamburg. It's just ridiculous. And at the same time, well, sort of wonderful. You know, I've always liked books. But you want to hear a good one? You know that thing, Moderation in All Things? How about this one? This comes from scmp.com, South China Morning Post. Bookworms slowly poisoned by their home library in eastern China. Yes, it's true. Voracious readers developed symptoms of formaldehyde poisoning last year, and tests showed it was coming from their tens of thousands of books. Yep, a couple in eastern China whose apartment was packed with tens of thousands of books, not just 10,000 books, tens of thousands of books, discovered that their home library was slowly poisoning them, according to a television news report. So I know that makes a pretty good case for that Kindle, doesn't it? I think maybe it does. Well, there's ever so much more to discuss. We'll be talking with Mr. Sutherland here, in about 20, 25 minutes, something like that. And in the meantime, go ahead and seal those pod bay doors. Very good. Everybody's on board. This is a mobile, global living room. So make yourselves comfortable and prepare for a nice, smooth ride on the Arc Midnight. Stand by.
You're listening to Arc Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
Mark Sutherland is going to be speaking with us shortly. He's in the UK. And we're going to discuss a variety of things, including the similarities between our two countries in as much as what is happening politically / socially. But before we get to that, I just want to bring you up to speed. I want to welcome our new stations. Thank you very much for joining us, and I think you're gonna enjoy the content. It's not just a program, you know. It's really content. But the content is. The content is toned down just a little bit for terrestrial radio because, well, it's terrestrial radio, and you never can tell who's listening, which is why Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com is a member service, and therefore we can pretty much let it rip. And I don't mean just get crazy with the language and start dropping, you know, alphabet bombs, which are everyone you might be thinking of at the moment. But we get into some things that are simply... Some of them are quite alarming. But we get email from all over the world, and snail mail letters as well, from people who express their appreciation for what we're trying to do over there and what we are in fact doing. Some of the stuff is a little bit strong to broadcast over the public airwaves. And some people that come on our program would rather have it contained within a membership service. I mean, you can understand that, and absolutely anybody can turn on a radio, but you better be careful what you say over that radio. You know what I mean? That's why we have this thing called a kill switch. Yeah. So it's like, did you bleep that out? Yes, I did. Okay, good. Thank you very much. That's fine. You know, get somebody call up every once in a while, had 2, 3 wines, and they want to talk about stuff. It's really quite something. So, we are very pleased to welcome onto the platform, if you will, Dr. David Janda. Now, he does his own program out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he comes over WAAM 1600 out of Ann Arbor. He's been doing it for a number of years, but he now is on Caravan to Midnight. So I produce a program every day, Tuesday through Friday. Dr. Janda produces one on Monday and another one on Thursday. And then we do Arc Midnight on Saturday, and he does Operation Freedom, because he's a surgeon. So it's Operation Freedom. He does that on Sunday. So that's a total of 8 programs, 2 terrestrial, 1 from each of us, and then 6 programs that are available on Caravan to Midnight. And so you can join just my part of the program, or you can also add Dr. Janda's part of the program as well. For that matter, you can get just Dr. Janda, and I won't be snubbed. I won't feel left out. So check it out. And here's something else. It may not be well known to you that General Michael Flynn was deposed for 4.5 hours to speak to the Benghazi Commission. We spoke to him in August 2016. Now, this story is posted at caravantomidnight.com, but the interview is posted on our YouTube channel. And that YouTube channel is just John B. Wells, okay? Caravan to Midnight is our Facebook page, and you can tweet with us over Twitter at John B. Wells, CTM, Charlie Tango Mike, okay? All right, very good. And by the way, Prince Harry, you know, he's really kind of a badass, if you know what I mean. He was over there they were trying to keep it on the down low that he was actually in action, but he was. And he is now urging young people to put down their mobile phones and is warning they affect mental health. Young people should try to take a break from checking their mobile phones to process their thoughts instead of rushing through the day, Prince Harry has suggested. He's spent the year campaigning on mental health issues and said more is still needed to be done to equip young people to deal with the modern world. Citing statistics about the number of times young people check their mobile phones, he argued everyone would be, quote, more effective and efficient if they took more time to simply think. What a good idea. Prince Harry spoke in Leeds at a panel. It was an event entitled Encouraging Young Happy Minds. It follows months of tireless campaigning for Heads Together, the charity set up by the Prince and Duke and Duchess of Cambridge to raise awareness about mental health issues. When you consider the statistic that 18% of our population is either being treated for or has been diagnosed with some form of mental disorder, whether mild or profound. I think it's probably important that we support causes like the one that Prince Harry is all about. Let's see, is there anything else that you might find interesting here? Oh, yes, quite a bit. Quite a bit. I just have to go back to President Trump. I really do. Just for a minute. It's like, are you a shill for Trump? No, but I voted for him. I did. And I also predicted, I don't know if anybody remembers, but I predicted Mr. Trump would win in a landslide, and he did. If you look at that red continental U.S. map, Just a few blue spots there, and the whole rest of it turned red. You may know by now this federal judge turned back Hawaii's motion on Mr. Trump's travel ban. The fact that ICE, his work in the streets, has dissuaded many people from crossing the border illegally. And they're still doing okay just because they didn't get over to the United States by running across the border and then risking their lives walking through what's basically, bush and brush country to get here. They're all right. It's not like we left them in the fire. And things are beginning to settle down just a little bit. But I would urge everybody not to relax. This is not the time to relax. And this is not the time to get tired. We must remain vigilant. Look what's happened to CNN. Look what's happened to them. Do you know I read a report just yesterday that their ratings are lower than reruns of Yogi Bear cartoons? I thought it was a joke, but it's not. Somehow MSNBC keeps their ratings up a little bit with Rachel. I call her a racerhead. Is that mean? Rachel Maddow. But even when you watch that program, it's the same thing being said over and over and over again, but the words are just rearranged slightly. And then there's all this motion with the hands. Now, that said, there's one thing about Fox News, which is the flip side of the MSNBC coin. One thing about Fox that I find disturbing and frankly annoying, and that's when you get the panel together, like it's the Five, I think it's called, and they all start yelling over each other. And before long, you're getting a headache, and you can't even tell what anybody's saying because they're all yelling over each other. It's just stupid. So I got an idea. Stay away from the TV. Watch your computer screen instead. And I got an idea. Watch Caravan to Midnight. You'll like it. I got a little something for you here. The sun, according to news.com.au, the sun might plunge into a deep solar minimum, which could cause part of Earth's atmosphere to collapse. Now, this is a new one. This is a new one. We know it hit 117 in Phoenix, and we know it hit 110 in L.A. I don't mean Louisiana either. I mean Los Angeles, right? And that 117-degree peak broke the record set in 1905. So that is, 112 years ago. So this whole thing about climate change is nonsense. It's the same thing that Charles Smith was talking about when he said, all this stuff about encryption. Oh, they're worried about encryption. We have to, the governments they're so concerned about encryption. Well, what they're wanting to do is alter the rules of mathematics, which you can't do because the numbers simply do not lie. All right? Climate change is sometimes called weather. Right? You cannot tell the sun what to do because all weather is caused by unequal heating of the Earth's surface. And I don't care what kind of a factory you have, unless you're letting off nuclear weapons all over the planet, you're not going to develop enough heat to rival that of the sun on a consistent basis. It's impossible. But scientists suspect the sun is on the verge of this deep solar minimum and is about to shower us with rays so intense that part of the atmosphere will collapse. That's what they suspect, that it will collapse. This is by Margie Murphy. The sun might soon batter us with a shower of deep space rays so intense that it's just ridiculous. It's nothing that we have experienced before. Space scientists reckon we're on the verge of this deep solar minimum, and unlike what the name may suggest, this could cause an outer layer of the atmosphere called the thermosphere to contract, and it's not entirely clear what the effects of this could be on our planet. Professor Yvonne Ellsworth at the University of Birmingham in England believes that a fundamental change in the nature of the sun's magnetic dynamo may be in progress, and it's backed up by NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory daily snaps, which have shown a spotless sun for 44 days in a row. This led scientists to believe that it's nearing a tumultuous period not seen since 2008. Solar minimums are known to spark lots of cosmic ray activity that can penetrate our atmosphere, and these cosmic beams cause air showers of particles when they hit our atmosphere. They pose a health hazard to astronauts, and a single stray cosmic ray could cause a satellite to malfunction. So you see, much of this is beyond our control. So let's just take a deep breath and relax and be comforted by the fact that there's a lot of this stuff. It's just the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. Thanks for being with us tonight. We shall return with Mark Sutherland after this brief message shower. That's a little shout out to President Trump for a successful trip to Russia. And I'll tell you what, the look on Vladimir Putin's face is a lot different when he's looking at Mr. Trump than when he was looking at Barack Obama. Vlad Putin had this look on his face when he would look at Obama like, I would like to take my thumbs and press into eyeballs of this little Kenyan twit. Then I would like to remove thumbs from eye sockets and then press into windpipe. This is what I would like to do. And then drink vodka to celebrate. But the photographs that I saw, it just looks like a couple of pretty tough guys looking at each other like, don't mess with me. It's like, we will not mess with each other. You will not mess with me either. So let's just hope nuclear war has been averted for a while, particularly over some place like Syria or, frankly, anywhere else. Now, Mr. Mark Sutherland is holding on the line, and let me tell you a little bit about him. Now, because this is primarily an American audience, many of these things will, projects he's been involved in will not be familiar to you. But I will say that Mark co-produced One of Us, also written by the late Mark Straker. He's worked with him before. And this went on to win the award for Best Drama at the Hollywood VSM. That's the Very Short Movie Film Festival, and Best Actor at the BFM Festival in 2007. And I mean, it's stuff in 2010, stuff in 2011, and he teamed up with Rob McKellen in 2013 to co-produce the award-winning and internet hit short film Abe, which Rob is developing with the studio into a feature film. But let's just go into sort of a fast-forward mode here. The outfit is Creative Hub Productions, and it has a number of things in development, which is very exciting. Now, Mark has teamed up with writer-director Ted Wilkes of Bottle Rocket Films to produce Between Lambs and Lions, starring Paterson Joseph and Finbar Lynch. Those names may not be familiar to you now, but they may be shortly. Between Lambs and Lions is a political thriller. It's set against a dystopian future. The American Constitution is null and void, and with it, the Star Spangled Banner. It's been assigned to a museum. In 2016, Mark entered the most important political event in recent UK history. He produced and directed Flexcit the Movie, the definitive guide to the UK leaving the European Union but saving its economy. His appearances on Revelation TV, in which he has explained why the UK needs to leave the EU, along with explaining why Donald J. Trump needed to win the presidential election, as Western civilization is at stake, and that was expressed last September 2016. And so, let's take a fast break and get on the line with Mark Sutherland. Please stand by. This is Arc Midnight. We will return.
It's not a programming glitch, nor some science you don't understand. It's Arc Midnight with John B. Wells.
All right, this is worth mentioning before we get on the line with Mark Sutherland, and that is that there are over 2,000 firefighters battling a whole bunch of blazes, triple-digit temperatures recorded in valleys and inland areas out in California. These are the first major wildfires after the end of a 5-year drought in California, but there's more. We were just contacted by Linda. She's in British Columbia, and one of those fires in British Columbia is very close to her house. She is asking for prayer, so let's do it. Let's pray that Linda and her neighbors are spared. It might interest you to know that there are 180 fires burning right now in British Columbia. So send some good thoughts and some prayers her way. And that goes to the other people in BC. This is rough, really, really strange. All right, let's talk with Mr. Sutherland right now, coming to us from the UK. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good evening, John. An absolute delight to talk to you, and a real honour to be here. And thank you very much for your kind introduction, sir.
Well, thanks very much for coming on the program. It's pretty early there in the morning where you are. I reckon it's getting close to 4 a.m. there, yeah?
It's just after 3:30, hence why I'm bright and awake.
Gotcha.
So just good morning from the UK. Can I just wish all your listeners and yourself belated happy Independence Day that you've just celebrated this week, or maybe the fireworks are continuing in various parts of your nation.
Yes, thank you very much for that. It was, I'm just happy that things worked out the way they did. It's, we're still cousins after all. It's just an extended family. That's all.
Amen. And I'm very blessed to be part of the family. Even more so, having recently visited in Dallas at the Watchman conference. So I'm very grateful to have gone there, as that's another part of my recent story. So thank you very much.
Well, you're quite welcome for it. We didn't get much time to talk to each other at all at the Watchman conference, but it was quite a get together. I'm looking forward to the next one that'll be in Dallas here next year.
So would I, because I would love to. I'd love to find out. And the comment I would like to make about that, John, and I know a friend is listening in Canada, so this is a shout out to say this, is that I flew all those thousands of miles to attend that conference to just confirm the fact that I wasn't going mad concerning the way I was starting to see the world and what is going on. As you various times, you use that phrase of like lifting the veil, as the veil had been lifted for me, and I had to go and be with other people that were on exactly the same page, because over here in the UK, there aren't that many people that are on the same page. There are a number, and very often I don't know where they are. I think that's the big challenge, is to find out where they are. So to fly out there and to meet everyone, it was an incredible conference, but also it was the fact, what really blessed me was I left there thinking I have just discovered family in Dallas. So I'm extremely grateful for that, sir, indeed.
I think the problem, Mark, is that so many people just can't believe it, and the left, the people who really have a distorted view of things. In my opinion, that's just how it is. I'm not even prepared to cut them any slack, as the saying goes. This Red Pill Expo that happened up in Bozeman, Montana, the most uncalled for little hit piece. Oh, the welcome mat should not be rolled out for this conference because these are people who, they were accusing G. Edward Griffin put it on. And he's not, last time I checked, he is not, I still don't really know what alt-right is, but it's just another catchphrase, but he's not a white supremacist or a white nationalist or anything else. He's a rational thinker, and they're saying, people think they're going there for one thing, but then the indoctrination begins, and it was just stupid. Just completely stupid.
It's quite shocking, because I'd heard about that. I think the other thing that was quite shocking was pointed out was the fact that the amazing woman that was talking about the IRS and the fact that sadly I've forgotten her name, who actually suffered a prison sentence because she was a whistleblower in regard to the IRS. I think that she is actually a black American, so it's rather interesting that she's being called maybe the only black American white nationalist in sort of world history.
Yeah,
so that kind of sort of lack of observation really is quite shocking, and I would encourage, and I'm not saying this to show off, I have some very, very interesting books that I've been there over the last sort of 6-7 years. And I have Ian's book here, The Creature of Jekyll Island. And I would urge anyone, most of your listeners, and most probably read it about 3 times and memorized it off by heart. And if people haven't, go and get that book. You're absolutely right. An incredible truth teller that man is. And there was a number of other friends of mine who were also at that expo who just spoke of it so highly. And we need this kind of thing, John, in the UK. We really do. And you're absolutely right in regards, and it's something we can chat about tonight, along with other things, is the parallels that are going on since the election that Theresa May called on the 18th of April and thought that she was going to totally win by a landslide, and conducted that election in a very, and I don't mean it in any disrespect, in a very presidential way, and totally disregarding what we call cabinet government. So it's the nearest sort of parallel to the executive branch, and totally and utterly ignored that. We then discovered that she had two unelected advisors that she had. I mean, some other people knew, but it was a major wake-up call for me. And I found myself getting rather angry to discover that, why didn't I know about this? And I thought I was fairly politically astute and fairly tuned into this. But she had two advisors, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill. They're civil servants being paid £140,000 a year each. And we discovered that members of her cabinet, remember that, Theresa May in one sense had become the Prime Minister of the UK by default. David Cameron eventually had to face the fact, John, that he had to call a referendum about the European Union on the 29th of June last year. In 2011, when he had to go into coalition government with Nick Clegg, who was then the leader of the Liberals, who rather ironically is just, and I'm not shedding too many tears about that. Now, Nick Clegg is trying to, we will get onto this maybe in regard to trying to explain the EU certain setup. But the first thing I would say on that in regard to the EU is a leg of global governance. It's a total leg of that. So it's a supranational government ruled by 26 unelected commissioners. That's the whole thing. It's designed in 1924. You could say there are other characters involved, but mainly, to make it in simple terms, if we look at people like Jean Monnet and Arthur Sauter, who incredibly then had a seat on the League of Nations in 1924. I'm embarrassed to say that Arthur Sauter was a British civil servant. So they got together and they designed this whole scheme of coming up with the European Union, where you would create a supranational superstate where you take away the democracy and the of each individual country that joined, treaty by treaty, stealth by stealth, but you do not explain that to the particular countries involved. And none of that, John, came out as it wouldn't, because that's what the globalist doesn't want. That none of that came about in regard to the explaining as we led up to the referendum vote on June the 29th. And two people, and that's why I was then motivated to make Flexcit the movie, as two people wrote a book. Christopher Booker, who writes in the Daily Telegraph virtually every Sunday, and Richard North, who's an esteemed researcher. They wrote a book called The History of Europe and the Great Deception. And I phoned up Richard North because he's a mutual friend of mine. And I phoned him up and I just said, Richard, I know you have a plan in regard to how the UK can leave the EU and protect its economy. And I have to say that things have vastly moved on from there. As someone who was at one point thought he was going to be an MEP, at one point he was very much involved in European politics, a researcher at one point to Nigel Farage, etc. His credentials are just stellar. And so they wrote this book. And I knew partly about this book, and I read some of that book, and steam came out of my ears. It just confirmed what I thought of this complete and utter lie. And I found myself in a situation last summer where I was actually in the television studio where there was a debate going on. In my life, I'm a carpenter as well, so I can use those skills within the film and TV industry as well. And I was using those skills, and I found myself inside the studio where Cameron and Farage was debating. They weren't really debating in one sense, as in both on the platform at the same time, as everyone has observed during the presidential debate between President Trump and between Hillary Clinton. And so they came on separately, and I was in there, and jumping about all over at this point is trying to lead up to why we then had this election and what's gone on. Inside that audience, and you won't be surprised because we look at what Donna Brazile did by passing on answers to Hillary Clinton's camp and all the rest. Not totally the same, but within that debate, there was a young lady. Basically, it was a setup, and then tracing back that we then discovered she was a journalist at the Huffington Post and all the rest. So the same kind of games had gone on. And then we, as you know, we voted to leave 17,752,410 people, with a majority of over a million voted to leave the EU. And Theresa May, let's just say this, was an arch Remainer. Hammond, who's our Chancellor of the Exchequer in charge of our money, is an arch Remainer. So Cameron then, after calling the whole thing of having a debate of staying in the EU or leaving, he thought he was going to walk this, John. He thought he was going to walk this. He believed, the polls and all the rest. And again, it's as though we can discuss so many things where all the parallels that have gone on for your presidential debate, in the fact that your polls for saying, it's going to be Clinton, it's going to be Clinton, it's going to be Clinton, and praise God and thank God it was not. And I have come from a lot of criticism over here since 2015, where it's like I've had friends say to me, well, what about the American election? And I just said, then Donald Trump has to win. And the sort of shock on people's faces, because of out of total ignorance. And I remember I was asked to go into a radio show over here to do an interview where I was talking about our short film Between Lambs and Lions, but I was also talking about the election of the presidential election. And this woman said to me, well, what about Donald Trump's attitude to women? And I had to stop myself from going, what about it? To then I turned around and said, well, what about Bill Clinton, Janika Broderick, Kathleen Wiley, and all the rest, and various other assaults that gentleman has done? Or no, we can't even call him a gentleman. So I apologize for saying that. And the interviewer's shock over, oh my goodness me, I've got someone in the studio that actually knows what he's talking about. And that's the key thing, John. You touch on this. People will not go and do the research. They will not find out really what's going on. Maybe they don't. So with all that background and going back to what happened with the whole referendum debate, Cameron then resigned. And then there was a leadership challenge. There was a leadership election. Yeah. And what happens in our system is that the political parties then, the leader of the political party then becomes the prime minister. So we had people like, at one point, Boris Johnson, then Michael Gove, stabbing him in the back, and then he disappeared, and then a lady, Angela Leadsom, was going to come in, and she threw her hat in the ring to stand, and then she backed out. And basically, Theresa May was like the last person standing, the last woman standing, so she then became the prime minister. And she then went on to say, we are all Brexiteers now, we are all leaving the European Union. So she then had to say, you are a representative republic. I don't have to tell you that, you are an expert on that. We then have a different system in a sense, or we have that terrible word called democracy. And we have the first past the post system with the 630 odd MPs. Whoever gets the most votes then wins. The Tory government then.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
No, go ahead. No, I think you're about to explain what I was about to ask. Go ahead.
Right. The Tory government then had a majority. We have 5-year fixed terms. So they're in for 5 years. If the only way to then call a quicker election within the 5-year framework is to call for a no confidence vote within the actual ruling government. And you become the Prime Minister. And I know that these questions have been asked by other friends of mine on your side of the pond, is that when Theresa May called the election, did she actually win the election? And yes, she did. She lost 13 seats, but she still won the election because she had 318 seats. To have a comfortable majority where there is no doubt about it that you would get through all your legislation through, and this is where our system is slightly different, because I believe, and please correct me, is that you may have like a president, say if we talk about Obama, then as a Democrat, but he might not have control of the House,
Correct.
Which is what happened.
Yeah.
Where over here, the Prime Minister, if you then have a majority, you have 326 seats or more, you can basically get through any amount of legislation you want without any problem, because when you put all the other parties together, and this is the difference, you of course have two, Democrat and Republican, and of course various people over there would like to start a third party, whether that's for smoking marijuana or whatever. I've forgotten that guy's name, Gary someone, isn't it? And
right.
Then over here we have the Conservative Party, we have the Labour Party, we have the Scottish Nationals, we then have the Liberals, and we have the Greens. So we have and the Welsh Nationalists. So we have 6 parties there, 5 or 6 parties there. So she then, and we have the DUP, I apologise. So she then, to get her working majority, has then gone into an agreement with the DUP, keep saying DOP as in film, DUP, that immediately gives her a working majority. So for her, that DUP deal is an incredible, incredible deal. So that's what she then had. And I know that on your side of the pond, some people have asked, they've said, well, hold on a minute, did she lose? Well, the Labour Party got 266 votes. So they did not have anywhere near 318.
I see. Well, you know what? We're going to take our top of the hour break and do some news and so forth. And then when we get back together, I'd like to just, I'd like for you to go into, of course, some more detail, but also explain to us the difference. We keep hearing the word democracy over and over and over again. We have to defend our democracy, and they're talking about the United States. And we don't have a democracy here. We have a constitutional republic, and you say that to people, and they look like they get the deer in the forest fire look. This is Arc Midnight. We'll be back. Hang on. You never can tell what happened right there where you're walking your doggy. You just never know. But what we have in this country was hard fought for. And you hear people twisting words. I mean, even down to little minutiae like, it's very concerning to me. It's very concerning to what? Yes, yes, it's very concerning. Do you mean it is a matter of great concern to you? Yeah, that. So far through this education system, they have gone a long way toward destroying our language, destroying our understanding of exactly even where our country sits relative to the rest of the world. I don't think they've even taught the children how to look at a map. They teach them not necessarily procreation, but just how to practice for it. And then we hear the same old thing over and over again. It's our democracy. Well, it's not a democracy. We're speaking with Mark Sutherland. He's in the UK. And he has some matters of some concern that he wants to discuss with us tonight, and he is doing so. When we get back together with him, I want to ask him some things about defection. We've seen defection. Oh, sure, the Republicans may control the House, but do they get anything done? Who defected to the left? How is it people can just stay in Congress forever? I wonder if that's how it goes across the pond. These and many other questions will be asked and answered as we carry on through the night here on board the Ark Midnight. I'm John B. Wells. We'll be right back.
An arc of rational thought traveling through the void of vacuous content and opinion. Ark Midnight with John B. Wells. Once again, here is John B.
A real pleasure to have Mr. Mark Sutherland on the program. And Mark, let's just pick up where we left off. But I was curious, is it too early to ask, do we have defections sometimes, or is it just as the majority, whichever party holds the majority, it's such a massive majority, it doesn't make any difference. You'd have to have massive defections to change what they wanted to do, or stand between them and what they wanted to do.
It's interesting. What an amazing question. Because for me, and I might be slightly veer off, but it's trying to then answer it. One of the most amazing things about the EU referendum to me was when you had the leader of the then sort of various members of the MPs in the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, and all the other parties turning around and saying, we need to stay within the EU, it's the best thing. As I said, you then wonder if we're actually living in a one-party state. And where we've reached now, which is deeply concerning, is that suddenly people have taken the gloves off and are going, in my opinion, for absolute sort of broke here. And actually, we are, in my opinion, surrounded by and infiltrated by total and utter Marxism. If you look at the manifesto of Theresa May, Prime Minister, it was big government, it was statism, which are words that you guys fully understand. And it was about the fact that, and she is someone that believed in big government. It's about the government can do this, the government can do that. There was hardly anything in there that actually talked about helping small businesses, small enterprise, the entrepreneurial spirit, which is fundamentally at the core of America, is what it stands for. We traditionally, our industrial revolution grew out of when grew out of nonconformist Christians. In other words, what I'm saying is that people that did not join, they didn't join the Church of England, so they couldn't become professionals. So they started with their very, very strong faith, their Christian faith, and believing the Bible, believing what the King James said. They then started all the businesses in this country, and that's how the Industrial Revolution came about. And we have thrown a lot of that away, and that is tied up with the EU. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that we have changed from that, from people, having their own, really seeking in regard to property rights and all the rest, seeking their own way by running businesses, and that's what we need. We are going to leave the EU. We put Article 50 in, and we need to rediscover the entrepreneurial spirit. And the group of people, and this will not be a shock to you because you have exactly the same problem, the group of people that wish to stop that happen to be quite a lot of members of Parliament. The ironic thing is, Theresa May, who then says she's a Tory, I personally think she's more like a socialist in a blue coat, personally, because the manifesto said that. She then is someone that wanted to remain and has now become the Brexiteer. Jeremy Corbyn on the other side. Now, let's just quickly focus on him. Jeremy Corbyn, who is like Father Christmas to the young, who promised, well, we're going to get rid of university fees, and then we're going to pay for this, and then we're going to pay for that, and ran up a bill of £250 billion of spending that we, frankly, cannot afford as a country, because paying off debt is so much of our GDP, and we're reaching that point where the imbalance is, this is getting pretty irreversible. And he was there like Father Christmas promising this. Now, this is a man who is a total and devout socialist, if not bordering on a communist. And, of course, the two distinct differences, socialism in communism, exactly the same, is what is imposed, very sadly, by a revolution and killing people. Now, that's him. To his right-hand man, Chris O'Donnell, a communist, an avowed communist, the person who who was then leading his campaign for the government, a total and utter communist as well. That is what people voted for. Now, Corbyn is someone who has, been linked with visiting members of Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. This is a reality, and has policies and views that are so anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian and all the rest. And at times, there is no doubt about it, views that I find anti-Semitic. And what's very, very interesting, and this is the concern, as Corbyn, he's still in power, as in leader of the Labour Party. The Labour Party have now lost 3 elections in a row, even though that they would tell you in their own mind they haven't lost. So it's a bit like on Blackadder, listen to this. They lost because Theresa May got 318 seats and they got 266. So could you please tell me what part of winning that is? I don't know whether they've done the sort of Common Core national curriculum via America, or they've done the national curriculum maths over here, where it's all big chunking and you're not taught long division or how to do it properly at all. The maths doesn't add up. You lost Corbyn. But the Labour Party had become, under Tony Blair, sorry, I've had to explain that name to America, that they became a centrist party. They've gone for the centre ground, which is what Theresa May was trying to do in going for the centre ground. Believe it or not, I think she was even dead scared that Tony Blair might start a new party, which he was threatening, which was to get us all back into the EU and all the rest. If you want to set up a new political party in this country, it costs millions and millions of pounds that even he, with all his property portfolio, if he sold it, could not, being such a champagne socialist, could not afford. So that's where we've reached. Corbyn is still in there. He will then go into October, the conference, the Labour conference, and he will seek to change the rules. And this is the key thing where you talked about this, of Congress people that are representative in the House, senators, etc., who are then in there year after year after year. And you get that, you get various characters in there where you're thinking, why is McCain even back here again? Harry Reid, do me a favour, Paul Ryan, etc.
Really?
What is going on?
Oh, yeah.
Why are these? They're saying one thing and then they're doing another. If Corbyn changes the rules, then what will happen is that various centrist MPs within the Labour Party who have just rebelled against him, because, believe it or not, Corbyn, with all his socialist communist views, is an arch leaver. He wants to lead the EU. I'll give him that. At least he's consistent about what he believes in. He always has been. So all these young people that voted for him, being Father Christmas, have missed out the fact that he wishes to lead the EU. He's never hidden that. And I believe that he actually went into the ballot box and actually said, I don't, he voted to remain. And of course, he had to join a group that's saying, we are now going to leave. That's the irony of the whole thing. And the group that's taken over the Labour Party, which is called Momentum, has started a campaign to deselect a female MP in the Wirral near Liverpool, who, I just make this statement, is Jewish, and they are seeking to get rid of her because the body that selects, or the rules around her in regard to that particular seat, who are all now members of Momentum, so it's a bit like the traditional Politburo, and they've swallowed whatever, Lenin or Marxist, whatever, and are now seeking to get rid of her because she's being anti-Corbyn. Well, there is 120 MPs, and well before that, who tried to stop Corbyn coming in and who they wish to get rid of. So trying to, maybe in a roundabout way, John, so please excuse me, the bottom line is that, to me, I see the fact that the Marxism and the left wing in all the parties, if not within Parliament, has been exposed. So when we joined the European Union in 1973, in 1972, I think, then was the election that Ted Heath, who then was leader of the Conservative Party, had a small little paragraph in the manifesto that said, if we join if we Tories win the election, I will take us into the EU. Now, rolling back, in 1958, I'd already mentioned that in 1924 the whole idea of the EU came about, and then the 6 founding countries. It happened in 1956, and the reason this came about was because after the Battle of Verdun and appalling casualties taken and the amount of armaments that were flying left, right and centre in regard to that battle, which was millions and millions of shells, it shocked people, understandably, as war does, as it completely and utterly tore up Europe. And the whole idea was to stop that kind of thing. But you could actually say that had been going on 300-400 years previously, that we as a nation participated in making sure that you had one kingdom that was quite strong, another kingdom, round about 3, so you could play one kingdom off another. So in the end, no one was ever going to be too big for their boots and rule over everyone. Mm-hmm. But the EU came about. And if we do our math, the war ends in 1945, and in 1958, Ted Heath and Harold Macmillan were then starting to plan how we could then enter the EU. And then in 1961, we first applied, and a very well-known Labour MP, will come to me in a minute, which I've just forgotten his name, said that if we join the EU, it will be the end of 1,000 years of history. In 1968, we then applied again, and Charles de Gaulle then said, you trade with the rest of the world. I'm not going to do a French accent. Why do you want to trade with us? And then in 1972, he won the election. 73, we went in. I have been in the room. I've had the privilege to be in the room with the people that tried to save our fishing industry, because this is what happened. We joined the EU, and we immediately sacrificed our fishing industry. Now, there's a very sort of infamous story of someone turning around to Ted Heath and saying, well, you do realise that the fishing industry, it's ruined. And Ted Heath said, how many people in the fishing industry? And this gentleman said 22,000. That's an insignificant vote. It isn't an insignificant vote. when you add on all the other jobs of looking after the boats, etc., all that infrastructure in these small fishing villages, and more importantly, their families. So that is what happened. The key thing, which is absolutely fascinating to me, is that the DUP, who are now about to hold up the Conservative Party, I think were formed in 1971 by Ian Paisley, who's a very interesting character. And because the Conservative Party, I believe, was the Conservative and the Unionist Party. Paisley formed the DUP, Democratic Unionist Party, because they objected to the plan to join the EU. So ironically, all these years later, the DUP is about to hold up the British government and also hold up, I personally believe, Christian values that we need in regard to the DUP is anti-abortion. The DUP, ironically, also believes in a small BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, or as some of us over here call it, the Biased Broadcasting Corporation, because it is the equivalent of CNN. It has, in fact, to be honest, it has far more power, propaganda of CNN. It'd be interesting to discuss that at some point, to just lay that out to everyone of how that functions in regard to propaganda arm. And it's, I see that more and more. So that's where we're at. And of course, in '73, when we went in, they asked Ted Heath, so Mr. Heath, will we be losing the democracy of our country? No. And we can thrash that word of democracy about, will we lose control of our... Basically, we surrendered the sovereignty of our country. But people thought that they were joining a common market, John. They thought they were joining a trading body.
Sure.
Now, my understanding, to analyze that for you, is that I don't think you had sort of like a personal tax system till, I know, was it the Federal Reserve was formed or just after that?
That's it.
From 1913. So money was made via tariffs of taking goods from one state to another. We then joined the common market to then not have tariffs where we could trade easily with countries. Well, if that is all it was, okay, fine. But it was never planned to be that. And I touched back on 1924, the whole plan. So people voted for that. But Ted Heath knew exactly what he was going into. And the reason why we know that is because, two people I mentioned earlier, Christopher Booker, Richard North, had gone through the government papers. He knew exactly what he was saying. There's even a comment by a civil servant turned around to Ted Heath and said, are you now going to explain it to the British people what happened? Oh, no, because basically they're not intelligent enough. Haven't you heard that before in regard to what's recently gone on and with presidential elections on your side of the pond? And if we then surrendered the sovereignty of our nation in 1973, frankly, it didn't matter who you voted for, because in time, by 1992, there was so much red tape, so much legislation starting to come down the line that tied up small businesses, that started to strangle on the whole aspects of entrepreneurialism and all the rest. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, you then start to see more and more the decline of our manufacturing industry, etc. Because the key difference is this, is that if you're a member of the EU, there's one person that goes and negotiates trading agreements on behalf of all the nation states that are part of the EU. You cannot go and do that individually. And when we're out of the EU, we will be able to come to President Trump and negotiate an independent trade deal for us as a nation, John.
That sounds pretty good. It was June 23rd of last year when the vote was held, and
yes,
it's already been over a year. Well, we'll take our break and then come back. This is very interesting. It's amazing. It's really It's a small world after all. Same sauce for the goose as the gander. And as he said, they thought joining the EU, we're just going to become part of a trading bloc. This is Arc Midnight. This is what we do. Stand by and we'll do some more. Just thought I'd let you know a little something here. John B. Wells in your speakers at the moment from the bridge of Arc Midnight. Antifa website calls for violence against Trump supporters. Now, this is very interesting. It's a disturbing Antifa website calling for physical violence against supporters of President Donald Trump and capitalists. The site, It's Going Down, which has become a resource for self-described anti-fascist activists, encourages violence against anyone it labels a fascist. A poster published on the site in April shows a man in a Make America Great Again hat being cornered by a bayonet with a silhouette of a Nazi in the background. You see their behavior. You see what they want. You see that they're cowards. You see that they mask their faces. You see that someone calls the police at Berkeley and tells them to stand down so these little cowards can do their version of throwing toys out of their prams. Well, if there are any Antifaites listening, be careful that you don't go too far, because if you do, well, your movement, if you get my meaning, will stop totally and permanently. We're not going to let violent savages destroy our civilization. You're dreaming. I would say whatever it is you're smoking or dropping, you might want to rethink that, because you're headed down the wrong road. You will not win. Better people than you will see to it. Oh, are you judging? Absolutely. We're called upon to judge those who are righteous and those who are criminal. You people are criminals, and as soon as you cross the line, you'll be dealt with as any other common criminal. One last little thing, and then we'll resume our most singular conversation with tonight's guest, Mr. Mark Sutherland, coming to us from the UK. Stand by, please. I want to talk to him about his movie, too.
The question is, do you really want to know? If you do, join the Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com. Now, more Arc Midnight with John B. Wells.
You know, speaking of Hear the Watchman, where Mr. Mark Sutherland was, and another one coming up in Idaho, I think it is, yeah. And I was talking about another one that I want to see happening in Dallas. That's going to happen next year, I'm sure. Okay, well, look, we are living in unprecedented times. The clock is ticking. There seems to be a disturbance in the space-time continuum because, well, like I just said a minute ago, the Brexit vote was June 23rd of last year. Well, it's 2 years away from happening. Well, we're moving into that second year now, if you get my drift. So every day, you read the headlines, and if you read your Bible at all, and you should, you'll see Bible prophecy unfold. I mean, everything from the nation of Israel will be established once again. It'll happen in one day, and it did. A third of the oceans will be poisoned. They are being. That's that whole Fukushima thing. So if you're ready to battle the coming chaos spiritually and get spiritually prepared and armed for what's to come, you need to attend the Hear the Watchman conference. Now, let me tell you a little bit about it. It is the Hear the Watchman conference this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime solar eclipse event. What I want you to do is go to hearthewatchman.com and reserve your tickets, all right? L.A. Marzulli's going to be there, Sharon and Derek Gilbert, Ruz Dizdar, Scotty Clark, Pastor Paul Begley will be there, Pastor Carl Gallups will be there, Michael Bodea, Dr. Michael Lake, Coach Dave Daubermeyer, Josh Tolley will be there, Pastor Casper McLeod. He is such a trip, and coming all the way from Israel, Messianic Rabbi Zev Poret. Now, this is limited time seating. It's going to sell out, just like it always does, so do not delay. Here's a promo code for you. It'll save some dough. Caravan 20. Caravan and the number 20 for $20 discounts on tickets, 20% off video conference for a limited time. It's going to be a live stream, so if you can't make it in person, you can get 20% off the video conference. So go to hearthewatchman.com, book your seat, or live stream today. This event will change your life. It's changed everybody's life who has attended it, and there are plenty of emails and snail mails and phone calls to attest to it. So don't miss it. You'll like it. Hearthewatchman.com. And don't forget, enter promo code CARAVAN20. Okay. Mark, thanks so much for sitting through that. When we relax on Caravan to Midnight and we just have a chat, we have a couple of breaks in there for music, but nobody hears them except the audience. They get to enjoy that music, but when you and I are having a conversation on it, we won't hear it because we put that stuff in later after production. But it does cut out a good bit of talk when we have to, run so many spots and do so many things. But that's how you do it in terrestrial radio. That's what keeps the lights on. So I appreciate your bearing with me and us. So,
not at all. Not at all, John. I really appreciate it. And can I urge people to go to hear the Watchman too? It's not a double act, even though it's a pleasure to have that double act. But it changed my life, John, totally. And as I say, I flew out there to confirm I wasn't going mad, and I flew out there all those thousands of miles to realize that I then connected with various people who I just class as family. So I'm profoundly grateful to that, because we use those phrases of waking up, and quite rightly, you're focusing on, spiritually, and we have to attend those places. The reason being is because, as we believe, the truth is spoken there like no other. There are various churches that we need to steer away, the whole emerging church movement and all that kind of nonsense. And when people are more worried about their 5013C or their charitable status over here, instead of actually preaching the gospel and warning people of what's coming down the line, then we have a huge problem. And the tie-in between that conference is warning about global governance, is warning about why the UN, etc., and the globalists want to get rid of the constitutional republic that you and so many of your listeners love, is because it's the last bastion of civility that's stopping the spread of global governance. And the European Union, as I said earlier, is a leg of global governance. When I filmed Booker and North, there was a little interview we just did before. There was about 8 or 9 minutes. And I just said to them, I said, well, guys, they said, what we're going to do here? And I said, look, you've known each other a long time. You're then meeting. Just discuss that. And suddenly Christopher Booker goes, actually, it's not about the EU. Really, sort of what concerns me is what is above that. Mm-hmm. And then the penny dropped for me, John. I couldn't believe it, where for me, sometimes if I say certain things, people go, you're a kook, you're mad, we don't believe you, you need to be, locked up and taken away. When Christopher Booker says it, who writes in the Daily Telegraph, who's been severely criticised by the climate change Marxist lot, green on the outside, red on the inside, and all this. And he then, when he's saying these things, people need to listen. And I'm so grateful that President Barack Hussein Obama decided to chuck his oar into the EU debate and to turn round and go, if you vote to leave, you will go to the back of the queue. Now, what a difference that President Trump is making, which is at the G20, my friend. As a friend of mine explained to me today, he broke all the rules. He's going in there going, well, hold on a minute, I want to have some meetings. Having a 3-hour chat with Vladimir Putin. Amen for that.
Yes.
As your news has just confirmed, that what we all knew, what we all know, that what CNN has just been exposed for by Project Veritas, that the whole thing, of the whole Russian thing, as we know, complete and utter joke. It's appalling, as various globalists are trying to push for World War III as fast as they can. And President Trump going over there, having that conversation. And he is representing your country. He wants to go in there and talk to individual countries and start making trade deals and all the rest.
That's it.
And what is then is revealed is that you cannot do that if you are a European country. And they're all going, no, Mr. President, this isn't how it works. We all have little chats for just 5-10 minutes over here. And he's going, well, hold on a minute. My book, The Art of the Deal, it says this. And I'm going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation and we're going to get a deal because I passionately believe in my country and that is what I represent. Where all those people who were at the European Union, no, it's the European Union bloc and everyone has fallen for the fact that they think it's some kind of democracy where we voted for the people. Well, let's just clarify something here, John. Juncker, who is this dreadful man to me, he, the president of the European Union or whatever.
He is a dreadful little man.
He's a dreadful man. And I have been, because we're on terrestrial radio, I have been polite. So, absolutely appalling. And Juncker's going, the whole thing to explain is, and you just touched on this, is that Theresa May has put in Article 50. And Article 50 is a letter that goes in, that was carried by the civil servant, that goes into says, this is our official leaving piece of paper. Now, what's rather ironic about that is that I believe until 2010, under the Lisbon Agreement, there was no sort of proper way given for any country to actually leave the EU. Now, the Lisbon Treaty was actually set up as the EU constitution. And they had to change that word because the Dutch, I think, had refused it. Maybe the French had refused it. And what I'm getting at is the fact that what they do is, look, go and have another vote. Go and have another vote until you actually give us, the EU, what we want. So just keep going until we get a yes vote. That's what happened with Southern Ireland in regard to joining the EU. I think that was about 2, maybe 3 times. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is outrageous. Just keep doing it. And, of course, that has been the big push from various people within Parliament to then say, well, hold on a minute, we'll have a second referendum. No, you won't. And then some particular woman was trying to take that through the law to stop the Article 50 going in, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, all these people completely undermining the sovereign government. And then we suddenly realised that, like you guys, where we've voted in MPs who've then exposed themselves to who they really are, arch remainers and all the rest, but we are leaving. And Article 50 goes in, and it means you have 2 years in which to negotiate. The two schools of thought here, John, that actually the EU will fall apart and it will leave us before we leave it. And when Juncker, that dreadful man, is demanding a bill from us of £50 billion rather, 50 million, but £50 billion as an exit kind of fee. I personally think we'll end up just walking away from the table and just going up yours. We're not giving you anything. You're not demanding anything from us. We are going. It is not any form of democracy whatsoever. How can you have one person going and negotiating trade deals around the world? And we will be negotiating a trade deal with you guys and other countries. That is what it is. The single market, to explain that to your wonderful listeners, the single market is the market that is just the members of European countries. Now, we trade with other countries, of course, but that's the whole fixation. How are we going to cope outside the single market? Mm-hmm. Norway, etc., pays a fee so it can trade with the European Union, etc. Richard North, if I go back to that book, The History of Europe and the Great Deception, Richard North's plan of Flexit is a sort of an increment extraction. Well, actually, I don't believe we're going to have that. We need a hard Brexit. And some people over here go, oh, what's that going to mean? All the youngsters go, oh, no, because of all the indoctrination for many, many years. And the hard Brexit is that you get rid of all the quangos, and the quangos that cost us millions of pounds, that are employing people that in the real world could not run their own business, at all. So this is this kind of thing, and you have the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Steve Bannon, etc., wants to get rid of that and other things, and over here they paint Steve Bannon as though he's Satan personified, or Breitbart and all the rest. It's shocking.
Yeah.
But you've got your equivalent of the EPA and all the other land grabs that are going on in Oregon area and all the rest.
Oh, sure.
So this is this kind of thing. And John, I say all this not as though I'm showing off on my knowledge. I'm saying it partly because I'm very passionate about what is going on in your nation and how this must succeed. And I passionately believe that you are being given a door wedge, and other people have used that brilliant phrase, not just me, but you've been given a door wedge.
Yes.
And that door wedge is President Donald Trump, of course, with all his failings. You're not perfect, nor am I, but you've been given that. And as Steve Quayle often says, there is no political solution to a spiritual problem. You all got down on your knees and pray, and I urge you, please, to continue to pray for your nation, and please pray for us over here. We need it like no other time, because if I look at what's happening, and these are the links, you were talking about Antifa, we've got those idiots over here. We now have, left-wing fascism. In other words, we've moved to a point, and of course politics is that. Politics should be an area where we can agree to disagree, we can have a good debate without getting our weapons out and defending ourselves. And you actually have the Second Amendment, and you're very, very fortunate. And I even saying that in English circles, I'm seen as a nutter, controversial, and and a complete member of some right-wing group. I mean, I'm not. The fight is about globalism and nationalism. That's what the fight is about.
Absolutely.
You know that.
Absolutely.
You know that. And that is what, for a number of us over here, we actually see that. We're not in control of our borders. We don't know who's coming into the country. That's the whole point. And we do need to know who's coming into the country. So that's why I'm passionate about what's been going on with your nation. That's why I made Between Lambs and Lions as well.
Yeah, I want to get into that heavily. No, not a bit. You really got me going on Jean-Claude Juncker. On Greece's economic meltdown in 2011, this is what he said: when it becomes serious, you have to lie. On EU monetary policy, he said, I'm ready to be insulted as being insufficiently democratic, but I want to be serious. I am for secret, dark debates. And then on British calls for a referendum over the Lisbon Treaty, of course there will be transfers of sovereignty, but would I be intelligent to draw the attention of public opinion to this fact? On the French referendum over EU constitution, if it's a yes, we will say, on we go. And if it's no, we will say, we continue. And here's something else. This is what's strange. On the introduction of the euro, he said this: we decide on something, leave it lying on the ground, and wait and see what happens. If no one kicks up a fuss, because most people don't understand what has been decided, we continue step by step until there is no turning back. This is what you're dealing with Juncker. He is not a nice man, not at all.
No. And the other thing is, what's incredible is you've just read out stuff that is not played out on the BBC, and I'd love to discuss that. It's not played out there. The propaganda is shocking. That's why when I said that I was in the studio and looking at, I mean, I'll just say this, not to show off, but just as an anecdote of how seriously I take it and how seriously I know that you take it, and your listeners, in the fact that, I walked all over that set and was just praying in that studio. I suddenly found myself, I was like laughing in a way, because I didn't expect to find myself there, and God just put me bang in the middle of this. And, these are these opportunities that we have to pray for, and we just have this massive, massive fight going on. And you have just read out stuff from Juncker that people don't even know. They don't even know half of these comments. I mean, I think some of his behaviour, and you can look it up on YouTube in regard to greeting various people, is profoundly questionable, and I would actually sack him. But this is the whole point. The BBC, right? Can I touch on that, John? Is that okay?
It's completely okay.
Because the BBC, I don't know if people are aware of this, and without even shooting myself in the foot, at times I've worked for them and may do again. But they are financed by a television license that every single person in this country that has a television has to pay. And if you don't pay it, you can end up going to court, and then you can end up in prison for a month.
Wow.
Yes. So you thought CNN was bad because you have the option to turn it off. We have the option to turn the BBC off. And if I'm honest, I cannot watch any of the political punditry at all, because if I did, I would need a new television every night, either because I put my boot through it or chucked a brick at it, because I'm looking at these people going, I disagree with you. Now, they run about 8 different television channels. They then have 7 national radio stations. They then have international television stations, international radio stations, and they also have a number of local radio. And yes, because someone had very kindly just downloaded some of this today, I just reminded me of this. Now, this is the other shocker. They publish and own a third of the magazines, I believe, that are published in this country, from, thing about cars, like traditionally in the past, Top Gear, or thing about sewing, or, baking cakes. A third. This is what we do. This is what we're doing. And also the amount of drama and entertainment they then provide. We are then paying for that. Now, you take, as you quite rightly say, the 23rd of June. I got that date wrong. But last year, building up to the whole thing of Brexit, going into that, and the propaganda, they were kicked in the teeth, they backed off, and then after Theresa May doing badly in the election, they have come on big time to try and stop our nation and undermine the whole thing of us leaving the European Union.
But you know what? I predict that's exactly what you're going to do. I think you're going to leave, and I think you're going to be just fine. Oh, man. I'll tell you, is this something or is it something? It's just nonstop action here on planet Earth. But it's good that so many of you are listening to programs like this one and others, and that you are engaged. This is Arc Midnight. We'll be right back. Now there is a blast from the ever-loving past. That's Spirits from the 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus. I wonder who that is. I'm going to look it up. Maybe I can Google Dr. Sardonicus. Unbelievable. Well, it's good to be with you on Saturday. Always a pleasure to be on the air from the Bridge of the Ark. Things come in and out of fashion, don't you find? And right now, alternative media is all the rage. A lot of people are posting just overtly phony stories, like Nancy Pelosi being arrested because her kids are trafficking coke and stuff like this. I don't even know why people put stuff out there like that. It's absolutely, it's wacky, kind of like Nancy, kind of like Maxine Waters, kind of like Harry Reid. And let's remember Paul Ryan. He's a little wacky too. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you be very, very careful who you put your trust in. Like we say on Caravan to Midnight, who watches the watchers? We do. Who watches us? You do. Over 770 programs in archive waiting for you. All kinds of deals. You know, Joe Meyer's newsletter. Chuck Coppice has an offer. And Dr. David Janda has joined the team as well. Or actually more like the crew. Team is two, right? So take a spin by the site. Have a look and become a member of the Caravan to Midnight family. We don't pull any punches. And if a name is called for instead of a term like globalist or elitist, we name names. That's what we do. And actually, more to the point, some of us, myself included, actually use our real names as our professional names. There are some people who are in this business who do not, which makes me wonder, what exactly are you afraid of? Or is it just simply you want to be able to drop off the scope the moment that it gets a little too hot, the moment that it gets a little too deep? That's the juice at Caravan to Midnight. So spin by the site, caravantomidnight.com. No numbers, no missing letters in midnight, please. Just the words, caravantomidnight.com. This is the radio adjunct over the terrestrial waves, coming to you from the XDS satellites. Right now, Arc Midnight. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Arc Midnight with John B. Wells. Now, here is John B.
I know it's just another commercial, but you know, I said it before. The water that we have now on planet Earth is all the water we're ever going to have. You know, unless some solid chunk of ice lands in the ocean and raises sea levels, and the environmentalists will go nuts. But you know, the water that you're drinking has been filtered through many, many kidneys over the eons. It really has. I mean, from that brontosaurus over there, to that tyrannosaurus over there, to that monkey over there, and that dog over there, it's all been strained through their kidneys at one time or another. So if you're all right with drinking your water being unfiltered, knowing that for a fact, I don't believe it. All right. And one more thing, I want you to come to hear the Watchman. It's in magnificent Idaho. It's called A Sign in the Heavenlies Redemption Convention. It's August 18th through the 21st. And if you'll go to hearthewatchman.com and use the promo code Caravan20, you get $20 discounts on your tickets and 20% off the video conference live stream for a limited time. It's going to sell out. Discounted hotel rooms are going quick too, so get on it. August 18th through the 21st. It'll get here before you know it. HearTheWatchman.com. Hey, Mark, I want to ask you something. We haven't touched on this at all, but dare I ask, who do you think is behind this ridiculous immigration wave all over Western civilization? Who has orchestrated this? Have you devoted much thought to it?
Yes, and I'm very grateful to people on your side of the pond in the independent media who's helping to really take the lid off. And again, what I'm about to say is not discussed over here because it's all the left-wing propaganda and it's not acceptable. So if we go back to 2009, I think on a global research paper, they talk about the fact that there was an oil pipeline going in the wrong direction that was not benefiting Europe. So suddenly, Assad becomes the new bogeyman, the person now we must go and do regime change and we must bomb that particular country. And then what we do is that we then accuse him of barrel bombing his own people, and I do not believe that. He has a conscript army, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he's a perfect person, nor am I. But I believe that. And there are people, the Syrian people, love him. And then suddenly, rather ironic, isn't it, John? You've just had on the news a woman going, and we know, Putin, it was interfered in our election, is interfering in other countries. Okay, really. So what is Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Clinton, then as Secretary of State, what's their action of giving al-Nusra and Uncle Tom Cobley and other nutbag terrorist groups weapons to overflow Assad.
Oh, yeah.
What is that then? Is that regime change, John?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Well, yeah, and how about that email that
change.
went between Clinton and Podesta about acknowledging logistic and financial support for ISIS from Qatar and Saudi Arabia?
Precisely. And also then you've got Erdogan's in Turkey's son, buying oil off ISIS and all the rest. People don't believe it here.
I know it.
They don't believe it. They don't believe that the 2,500 Humvees or Toyota trucks, which are the various sort of Al-Qaeda favorite vehicle, are then left on the battlefield, which I always thought was against American military conduct. You either blow up the armaments or whatever hard assets you've got, and then you disappear. You don't hand them over to the enemy. And your wonderful interview with General Flynn, which I watched the other day, and that particular gentleman, very brave and American patriot, has exposed a load of that in regard to the funding of ISIS and all the rest. So answering the question, the whole question is to destabilize nation states, to create the chaos. And you know that phrase, out of chaos, order comes out of chaos.
Oh, yes.
This is totally and utterly deliberate. So if George Soros is being kicked out of certain individual countries because of what he is being funded and all the rest. Now, people groups moving, Angela Merkel, Germany. Is this because Deutsche Bank, I'm trying to think of the website that's talked about this, brilliant one, is it the fact that Deutsche Bank were in financial problems, so that Saudi Arabia says we will bail you out, but you must accept all these people? However, if you then create the chaos in, you go into Libya, we came, we saw, he died, ha ha ha, says Hillary. You bomb the crap out of that. You then create Benghazi. We then know where Admiral Stevens is because we're looking at the 35,000 emails that this particular woman, I have to hold my tongue there, has on 3 or 4 different servers, on 5 laptops, and umpteen Blackberries. And, of course, that's another scandal in regard to the Blackberries that have been given out to representatives of Congress or whatever. And then you've got those 2 Pakistani guys accessing all that information, right? That's another thing. But this is what has been going on. And it's like, oh, no, 35,000 emails. What's the problem? The chaos is deliberate. And when she's friends with Morsi, and Morsi's wife, when you get rid of Mubarak and all that, and then you create that chaos, and then thank God General Azizi goes in there, stops that. It's deliberate, John.
Yes.
And you then we are then funding with America this group called the White Helmets, as they say, is some kind of Red Cross equivalent in Syria, who are then staging various things. I can't say that over here. We don't really have free speech, John. We can discuss it. The country that actually translated the King James Bible from Greek into English. We can't even take the King James Bible on the streets of this country.
Is that
it's
a fact?
Accused of, it's accused of I think when we were here, the Watchman, the lovely guy that spoke last actually raised that. He said that 2 preachers had just been arrested. I think it's been thrown out in regard to quoting the King James Bible on the streets. To actually be in the room when that was being talked about, it sent a chill down my spine, because I just thought, yes, I know, that's my country. This is our heritage. This is what's going on. This is what we've done. And we are the enemy is having an absolute field day, and the so-called church is not doing anything about it. And we're now, sorry, I'm slightly going off it, but we're now seeing a sort of particular movement where we just come out of certain structures like that, because church-wise we can't attend, because it's just watered everything down. They don't even believe Scripture.
Well, is there any more preaching on Sunday mornings in Hyde Park?
Yes, there is.
Okay, good.
There is.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there is a Speaker's Corner. I think someone was telling me that step ladders have been banned, ladders. But going back to all of this, it's all deliberate to create the chaos because it's this whole thing of feeding a global governance. It's that whole thing of creating, and you know who I'm talking about, who are far greater than me, who know this subject inside out, where they're creating global governance to then create this utopia, which then means there's no such thing as our individual judgment before our God. That's the whole idea, to actually create a situation where, no, we don't want Jesus returning. We don't want individual judgment. We create this utopia so we can try and avoid all this. Well, you and I know the book. We've read the book of Revelations, particularly where it's talking about this. They ain't going to get a time to do this. This is we know what we're entering into. Of course, it's not comfortable, but this is the reality of what's coming down the line, is to get rid of nation states, to push through various things in regard to the UN, where Obama hands over the whole keys to the internet to the UN. Then we have a straight and believe that, then you're fine. If you don't, then you'll become a person non grata, then you will become a political prisoner within your own country, and then we will either imprison you or deal with you. That could be coming, or it will be coming down the line, and we have to stand firm, well, not how somehow, but stand firm within God, with our faith, with our relationship with Jesus, and stand and warn about what is going on. So, going back to your question, yes, it is totally and utterly deliberate, and I feel that the left have then got into bed with the ideology of Islam to then crush free speech. And this is the huge warning to your nation. I mean, you look at what happened at Berkeley. I mean, Berkeley, which I always thought, my own understanding of that, was the antithesis of free speech, civil rights movement, and all the rest. And where free speech has gone the other way, if you do not agree with what we say, if you do say things that we don't like, then we're just going to crush free speech. So that's gone. So the melee, the chaos, we have been funding, going back to this in regard to the white helmets in Syria, our nation and America, we've been funding this group, these links. There's even, people like Paul Joseph Watson have shown this, of these kind of fake photographs that are then drummed up to create sympathy. For me to even say it, it's like, what are you trying to say here, Mark? Are you saying that these are lies? Yes. Because why do we, there are other things that are going on, but in many ways, why do we want to cause the particular chaos in Syria and all the rest? Because it's as though we just want to bust the economy of ourselves and of those particular nations as well. So if you say, you ask me a question, have I thought that? Yes. I strongly feel it's to create, potentially create civil war as well within Europe. I don't want to see that, asking people to pray against it. But this is what we're doing. We are fighting a very, very real enemy. Donald Trump, President Trump, as quite rightly called him President Trump, because Democrats seem to have a problem with calling him President Trump. If we, as he called out in that incredible speech in Poland, which was vilified, I think, on certain lefty comments within the BBC over here, he was describing it as the fight against its good and evil. People don't even want to have that discussion.
They really don't.
They don't. And last September, I said it. I'm not saying it to be big. I just said that someone said to me, how important do you think this president election is? And I said it's saving Western civilization is at stake.
Yes.
That's it. period. And it's as though, we've already had those, I can't remember the date, but we had the Battle of Tours, I think, the Battle at the Gates of Vienna, where we stopped marauding Islamic armies at the European gates.
Yes.
As Bill Warner on your side of the pond, superb individual,
he was on last week.
Brilliant. He's excellent. He, when he has talked about the 1400 years of marauding, that isn't discussed in regard to the ideology. So the ideology says we will bring in Sharia law. Now, I want all these Muslims to become Christians. We believe that Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and life. That's it. Now, to even say that here, we're turning around saying, well, that's hate speech. Excuse me.
Yeah.
This is how far this has gone. We are looking at, maybe looking at certain aspects of Germany in between 1935 and leading into 1934 to 33 to 1939, and the persecution of Jews, etc. The persecutions of Christians within Europe, and what Europe, sorry to jump back to that, what Europe has done, has decided it reformed itself under the Reformation. It then read the Bible and realized that you can then have a personal relationship with God through Christ. When people are calling for the reformation of Islam, the Quran, some people are saying, well, that is yet to come. Well, actually, hold on a minute. The Reformation there has already come because they've read the book. They've understood that it talks about a jihad, and then that is the Reformation. And very sadly, that is what we are seeing play out. And then over here, we then have politicians going, this is the new norm, this is what you have to accept, etc.
Yep. All right. Well, let's take another little break because that's just the way of things, and we'll be back with Mark Sutherland. I'm John B. Wells, and this is Ark Midnight, a very important message to follow. Stand by for that. That very well may be the most prophetic rock song written. I want to tell you something. My dad told me many, many things, my father. He checked out on the first day of summer, June 21, 2001. And when I asked him, who is running this? He gave me a most unexpected answer. The answer was the same ones who have always run it, the jihadis and their backers. Now, you've heard of the Illuminati, but maybe you don't believe it. But all you have to do is look at a dollar bill, see the little owl in the frame, look at all the weird stuff on the back, the all-seeing eye and the pyramid and all that stuff. Well, there was this grand wizard, a top Illuminati grand wizard named Albert Pike. And Albert Pike predicted 3 world wars. All right? Albert Pike openly stated that Islam will be the central component in a war against the West, that the Illuminati will lead Islam into direct confrontation with the West. We've already seen what the New World Order has done with Islam, and that is to foment a crisis, escort millions of Muslims to European nations, set up Sharia courts, target European women with sexual assault and rape, and watch as Brussels, Belgium, and Paris, France, all those attacks happened. But it's all been planned, setting the stage for World War III, just as they set the stage for World Wars I and II. We've gone to extensive lengths to reveal the facts behind our involvement in World War I. The Lusitania was most assuredly carrying arms. German shipping lines beseeched American publications to place their ads warning people not to take certain ships or sail certain routes. They were refused. And FDR continued to prod Japan into the first move, which resulted in Pearl Harbor, where my dad was on the USS Maryland, December 7, 1941. Listen up. This is not make-believe, this isn't nonsense, and this certainly isn't mainstream media. You got me? I thought you might. This is Ark Midnight. We'll be right back with our final segment with Mark Sutherland, and I want it to be all about his movie, Between Lambs and Lions.
The question is, do you really want to know? If you do, join the Caravan to Midnight at caravantomidnight.com. Now, more Arc Midnight with John B. Wells.
All right. You know, I looked at the little trailer for Between Lambs and Lions. And you can see it yourself at Between Lambs and Lions, themovie.com. Between Lambs and Lions, themovie.com. And it's really rather disturbing. So, Mark, I want this segment to be all about this movie, your involvement in it, and where people can see it.
It's very, very kind of you. The short film is a short film, and it is something that, others would dearly love to make into a feature film, because I passionately believe it has something to say. Young guy who wrote it and directed it, Ted Wilkes, he entered a film competition that he didn't win, and I saw it, and I just thought, it really spoke to me, because it is taking the book of Daniel and setting it in the modern context of the machinations of Washington politics. And I just felt really spoken to, which is get this out there. And so I then said to him, I said, have you written a screenplay? And he said, no. Do you think I ought to write one? I said, yes, you do. Yes, I do. And I said, then we're going to make a short film to really try and raise the publicity and get it out there. And also that was being my part of my journey in regard to understanding your politics and why I'm passionate about it, but also what's been happening in your nation. So it depicts a time when the Constitution has been completely suspended. So the Republic's Constitution has been suspended and technically, assigned to a museum to collect dust. There's a complete takeover by the executive branch, and that is what. So President Nebuchadnezzar, interesting, he then has absolute power, and Daniel Alesso, an old member of the House, as it's become, then seeks to stand against him. So the film was shot in London, and without sort of bigging it up, John, I felt it was my contribution to trying to wake up people to what is going on in your great nation. Now, not everyone involved in the film may either get that or fully understand it, but that's one of the reasons why I was passionate about that. And also, I flew out to Dallas, partly because of that as well. That's why the interest. I also went out and met Mike Norris, so that's a discussion I would love to have and continue, because it would be fantastic to turn it into a feature. Because it speaks, I believe, of what is happening. And I remember going on a friend's radio show across on your side nearly 2 years ago, and my friend Gaddy turned around and said, "That's Obama." And I said I couldn't possibly comment. So the short film opens. You can find it on YouTube if you put in Between Lambs and Lions, and you can find it on YouTube. I'll be delighted if it does. And there are some wonderful, I would say it, but there's just over a minute and a half of graphics at the beginning where it lays out what's been happening with in the world. Endless wars rage. Money is manipulated until it means nothing. Now, I mean, maybe this is too big of a jump, but we uploaded that film in June 2015, and I was very proud of the fact that it even made it to Steve Quayle's website, so that really made my day. And we uploaded it in time for Independence Day on July the 4th, 2015. And of course, round about mid-June, 15th of June, I think, or round about that time or just afterwards, Donald Trump, as he was then, actually said he threw his hat in the ring to say, I'm going to run now for president. Now, this may be a bit of a jump, but I've suddenly seen in some ways that our little short film there are certain parallels. Because whatever we think, whatever people think, and as again I've said, and I've defended him, and I will, it's not about Trump, it's about the movement that he represents. And like all of us, he is not a perfect person, but he passionately believes in the nation of America and is extremely patriotic on what it stands for. So in a sense, there's a bit of a parallel between our short film as someone who steps up to the plate to then save the Republic. And I'm very proud of the fact that we made it in London. We've got away with certain things. I'm very, very grateful for everyone that worked on that film. I'm grateful that people on your side of the pond pay us a compliment by, I wish it was more, that'd be great. If on YouTube and various other platforms on Vimeo, it's at over 10,500 hits. I wish it was more. If people could share it, get going. We all know that various social media suppress things if they don't agree with it, but it'd be fantastic if we can get it out there, because I believe it speaks truth to power, and I am greatly complimented when I don't think I've insulted anyone on your side of the pond. I hope we haven't, because we just want to do justice to raise aware to what is going on. So it is something that, it's just finding the money, John, just to turn around and go, look, does it have legs? I do believe it is. Is it something to develop? Yes, it's just meeting the right people. I have another short film that I've produced that will, God willing, comes out in a few weeks' time, that actually we've done America, we're now doing Russia, which is rather interesting with all the discussions going on. So it was quite a graft to just make the 10.5 minutes, and especially when it's on a shoestring of nothing, and to getting to where we actually got. So that's it, John, in a nutshell, really.
I got you. Well, I thought I was a little confused, and I thought this was the trailer. So the full length feature film is really yet to be made.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
gotcha. Well, we might have to do some sort of crowdfunding for it. Look, here's the thing, Mark, just jump in anywhere you want here, but this is where I come up on the matter of the truth. People say, we want the truth. They won't tell us the truth. They won't tell us the truth. We want the truth. We really, really want the truth. Okay. We know that there was, seriously, didn't Vladimir Putin, if he didn't actually say it, he should have. If I had the power to control an election, do you really think I would have picked Obama, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We know, it's like leftists get this. It was your candidate, Clinton, who had the private email server. She kept saying private email account, but it wasn't just an account. It was the server, and she was doing state business on it. It is she who ran the foundations. It is she that is connected to former FBI Director Comey. And my personal opinion, Comey was in her pocket. He's an ex-Lockheed Martin guy, made lots and lots of money.
And HPS Director as well.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, there was the sale of 20% of our uranium deposits to Russia, to Rosatom. Started off Uranium 1, wound up at Rosatom.
Yep.
So it was their client, their candidate, rather, their client, to be closer to it, their candidate that had the ties with the Russians. But that's what you have to do now. You have to look at the mirror opposite of what's being presented to you in mainstream media. And when people get the truth, the real truth, it may not come in the form that they want. It may not be the answer they anticipated. No. It may be downright unpleasant. But you have to ask yourself a question. Do you really want it, or do you really not? Are you just playing at it, or do you really want to know what's going on?
Well, as that phrase says, you can't handle the truth. We've got to man up and handle the truth. It's interesting because with Podesta, hasn't there been an accusation that Podesta and is it Wallace as well? What's that other Democratic lunatic?
Which
Madeleine,
one?
Very good point, sir. Very good point. Quick response. There was someone else who's got pension investments in Russia, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, I know.
That has all come out.
Mm-hmm.
And no, you're absolutely right, because they're creating a fire in one corner while the distraction goes on in another. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's why for us as a nation at the moment, the BBC has come on full throttle, where it's come on full throttle in regard to, as Times in regard to Russia. CNN, of course, has. But it's coming on as full throttle in turning around and saying, right, the EU, are we going to really leave? No, Brexit doesn't really mean Brexit, etc., etc. It's come on full throttle in trying to create a situation where Jeremy Corbyn's going, oh, in 6 months' time, I'll be Prime Minister. I pray to God that does not happen.
He is just nauseating.
Precisely. Now, I'll give him this. I will give him this, John. He has been consistent. All his life, he has been consistent. But you quite rightly you talk about quite rightly Albert Pike, you talk about the three wars, you talk about, I don't mean that lightly, the last thing we want is another world war, because in many ways, you know, if they were going to then fight a fourth world war, as someone says, then that's going to be fought with sticks and stones. You know, we don't even want to think about the consequences of this. But we know that the whole world is in God's hand. We know that. But Albert Pike said that. We look at what's on the dollar. We look at Bilderberg, Illuminati. We look at how all these power brokers, and people say this isn't true. It is true. And that's why the BBC is very interesting, because in 2000 and in about 3 years' time, it's like, or 5 years' time, it's the 100th anniversary of the BBC. This year is the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. These things spiritually have massive consequences. And you over on your side of the pond are seeing useful idiots fill your streets. And we on this side of the pond are bored. Well, we've seen some useful idiots where Corbyn held a march a few days ago. I've got no objection to people wanting to express their political opinion and all the rest. That's right. But I object to sometimes the violence, how that is displayed. I object to the fact that we can only have a discussion unless you agree with me. And if you don't agree with me, then I'm going to threaten you with violence. Mm-hmm. That is wrong. And I have never, ever, ever seen a time. So President Trump coming into Independence Day, talking about that, one nation under God, we worship God. And Barack Hussein Obama is in Indonesia accusing you lot of don't have too much independence.
Yeah, don't be too patriotic. Yeah,
too patriotic. That's the word. Don't be too nationalistic. So hold on a minute. So this man then, who was sadly voted in as president, and second time, I still to this day find it hard why, but maybe even then I wasn't so as woken up as I am now. And there he is going around doing that. There he is. The accusation is of 30,000 people that they've trained to be disruptive, to cause the violence on the street, all these Antifa people. I mean, this is shocking. Can't this man, as a friend of mine said, even yesterday, said, can't this man just go away? You know, no president has taken a house in Washington in the way that he's done.
2 miles away from the White House.
Yeah, precisely. And then to have Valerie Jarrett in and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. I mean, I find it unbelievable, right? I find it unbelievable. And the biggest thing, the constant thing that I have a go at Trump, well, at least he's run a business. I think, net worth of, employing 20,000 people, employing lots of women as well, handing out, very interesting, isn't it, before he then runs as president, where people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are calling him a racist. But they didn't mind when he was giving them money, and they were extremely, and because he's always done that, I believe, which is employing black Americans on building sites and all the rest, and good for him, and someone who really sought to do that. I mean, it just astounds me how all of this is being constantly played, and then people like Dinesh D'Souza make a brilliant film where suddenly he reveals to the Democrats that they actually started the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, you can't make any of this up. And the important thing is that people have just got to get out there and do their research, because one of the things that deeply concerns me over here, and again, like I know you have, I'm sure, and other people I know on that side of the pond, where we're constantly saying, well, there's another friend we've just lost because we've just spoken truth. There's other friends we're gaining because people are on the same page. So this is this is again this information war, and we've just got to go out and educate ourselves. I'm just very, very sad when I see certain young people who are not educated themselves at all. I mean, I think I don't know what goes on in your civics lessons these days. We look at the culmination of a number of years where you've just watered down various subjects, etc. So that's what we've got to get back to. We've got to talk about the history of our nations and all the rest, and sovereign government. But of course, with the younger generations, it's not something that they understand here. It's not something that they want. Sovereignty. What does that mean? Oh, are you telling me I can't go to Europe now and have a very nice holiday and all the rest? No, we're not saying that. I love Europe, but I do not like European governance. And you on your side of the pond, the President Trump is being criticized because he actually wants to defend the nation. He actually does not want illegal immigration in the country anymore. And the ironic thing is, I think, wasn't it the Clintons? Didn't Bill Clinton start building umpteen yards of metal fencing and all the rest? They've done that, and they're accusing Donald Trump of being racist because he wants to build a particular wall. But it seems to be okay for the Democrats to do that, but not okay for him.
Well, yeah, I tell you, one of the things I really like about Mr. Trump is his style. And he did not even wear a G20 pin. He wore an American flag pin. Everybody else, everybody else is wearing the G20 pin.
Absolutely.
That's so much fun. Well, look, it's been a lot of fun and very edifying speaking with you. And I hope to do it again on Caravan to Midnight, where we can talk even more.
I would be delighted, John, and thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege and an honour to have a conversation with one of the most amazing voices in radio. So thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch, and we'll get together and see how we can support you in getting your production done, because it needs to be seen, and the sooner the better, if you ask me. So God bless, sir, and we'll talk again soon.
God bless you. Thank you.
Folks, it's very interesting. I'm looking at this thing from the AmericanConservative.com. And these two writers at The Atlantic, Peter Beinart and James Fallows, just took exception to what Mr. Trump was saying about our civilization. Referred 10 times to the West in his speech and 5 times to our civilization. What business does a U.S. president have in a foreign land, one of the writers wonders, tying American values to the civilizational heritage that is also the American heritage, right? Fallows assaults Trump for giving a speech that minimized the role of ideals in American identity, maximized the importance of what he called civilization, which boils down to ties of ethnicity and blood. Fallows calls Trump's speech a shocking departure. Beinart, responding to Trump's question of whether the West has the will to survive, saw that as perhaps the most shocking sentence in any presidential speech delivered on foreign soil in my lifetime. These two people, in the opinion of John B. Wells, your host, are ponces. God bless you, each and every one. Talk to you later. Arc Midnight out. The latest wave of knockoff gravity filter systems utilize black elements that mimic the appearance of black Berkey elements, but these elements are less powerful. They deteriorate when filtering high levels of chemicals such as chlorine, and they produce water at an agonizingly slow rate. One element even arrives wet in a bag because if it dries out, it stops working. If you own a slow flow system, we have good news. You can upgrade to the power of black Berkey purification elements. That's because they're interchangeable with most slow flow gravity systems. These powerful purification elements filter water 8 times faster than slow flow elements. This means that by replacing 4 slow flow elements with only 2 black Berkey elements, you save a bunch and your system will produce about 4 times more water. Stop the aggravation and upgrade your system with fast flow black Berkey elements, the most powerful gravity-fed purification elements available. Get your black Berkey C2M special by ordering online at berkeywater.com/C2M or call 877-8